Picture this. We buy an abandoned building and we turn it into a boutique hotel.
Welcome to the Brandon Market Podcast, the show for short-term rental owners who want to turn their listings into legacies. I'm your host, Allie Haney, owner and co-host of multiple properties and founder of Brandon Market, where we help Airbnb hosts and short-term rental investors build intentional brands, smart marketing systems, and guest experiences that actually move the needle. Each week, I share practical strategies, real-life stories, and behind-the-scenes insights to help you attract the right guests, increase bookings, and run your rental like a business, so you too can be the best in your brand and your market. Let's dive in.
Recently, I've been trying a new thing on Instagram where I have been going live with whatever is on my mind at the moment. And so far, I've only done 2 of them. The first one was about basically what the majority of this podcast episode is going to be about. I will reveal that in 1 second. And the other one was about a guest speaker that we had in a group that was called Action Academy. So let me back up and I'll give you kind of the background of what I mean by that and what Action Academy is. Action Academy is a membership that has education portion to it. So there's online modules that you can go in and learn. There is a networking portion of it. You have a ton of connection calls that you can have throughout Action Academy. And then there's also just overall like accountability, being in a Facebook group, etc. The typical person that joins Action Academy is someone that is looking to leave their W-2 and become a small business owner, most likely through the route of SBA or small business acquisition. So there are a lot of people in there that are not quite on the same path as me, but for all intents and purposes, we are walking on the same path. And within Action Academy, they also have a hospitality asset class. So what that means is anyone that's somehow involved in the hospitality world, whether that's short-term rentals, micro resorts, boutique hotels, like once we get up into the commercial properties, you get more of those boutique hotel owners and stuff like that. I obviously spend most of my time within the hospitality asset class. Throughout that experience, I've been introduced to a ton of new people, some within Action Academy, some outside of Action Academy that Action Academy members have introduced me to. And I am going to link Action Academy below in the show notes so you guys can learn a little bit more about that program, about that mentorship and membership. And also the founder, Brian Lubin, who hosts another podcast, the Action Academy podcast. You should definitely go give that a listen. A couple of the things that I've been introduced to throughout Action Academy, which I was not anticipating when I joined a small business acquisition group, was human design. One of the members in there, she is a cost seg analyst, specialist person, and she was helping with cost seg on Luna, which that is a tax strategy to be able to reap as many tax benefits from a short-term rental property as possible, also known as the STR loophole. You should definitely look into that if you are a short-term rental owner, which pretty much all of our listeners are. But she had a different impact on me as well when she introduced me to human design. And human design is basically a personality test, but all you have to do is put in your birthplace and your birth date, and it basically tells you literally everything about yourself. As an avid personality test taker, the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, you name it, I've probably taken it. I was very intrigued by this because I always try to reverse engineer those tests and get the answer that I think I want. For example, I knew that I wanted to be an Enneagram 3, which is the achiever, the one that sets goals and hits those goals, the hard worker, doesn't take any excuses kind of mentality. That's who I knew I wanted to be, the result that I wanted to get. So I feel like I answered those questions with that subjectivity in mind. I can't do that with human design. I can't change my birth date or my birth time or my birthplace. Like, it is what it is. So that's why I was really intrigued by this one. And I got a result back called the projector and seer. Basically, what this means is that I'm still understanding. It's very intricate and deep, but I don't have much of my own energy. I can't continuously work on projects over and over and over again with no break. I need a little bit of blank space in order to continue to keep going. Another part of this is that I am very intuitive and I should not squash the intuition or the feelings that I feel immediately upon being faced with a new situation. The next point that I want to make about this is that I was the projector, seer, and my main type was by invitation. The way that I approach life is that the situations that I am invited to are the ones that I flourish most in. And so for me, the one that likes to be the achiever or the type 3 work hard person, to hear that I don't necessarily have my own energy, so I can't just continuously work all the time. And I need to be invited instead of being a go getter. Those two pieces of information were in direct competition with what I thought about myself. But once I started to dig deeper, I understood a little bit more about what that meant. And basically, when I say I have to live my life I'm most fulfilled when I live my life by invitation. It's when I know that a group or a person is open to receiving my area of expertise rather than forcing myself on someone. And that's given me a lot of insight into my business, right? Like in the past, ever since I started my business in 2017, all the way up until now in 2026, almost a decade later. My 2017 business was a wedding photography business, and almost all of my leads were from referrals. It was all word of mouth, except for like the very small subsect that was like bridal shows. But even then, they had met me in person, they knew my energy, all of the things, right? Versus I had never, not once, booked a client directly from Instagram, which is a cold audience typically. That shed a lot of insight into just the way I run my business and the way I should or could live my life to be a little bit more fulfilled. Now, hang tight with me. I will eventually circle back around to the point of why I say that that is important. First, of course, Action Academy. If you are watching on Shorts or on Instagram, you can see I have my Action Academy hoodie on today or quarter zip on today. That was the first thing within Action Academy that I got out of it that I wasn't expecting to get out of it. The second thing was a guest speaker, and this is what I spoke about directly on my Instagram Live the other day. Guest speaker by the name of Monica Lawrence, and she created this philosophy around quantum surfing. She was a guest speaker in the hospitality asset class. Once a month, we get to host people outside of Action Academy, and so she came in and shared with us all about her philosophy behind quantum surfing. So again, the person that values hard work, that thinks there are no excuses, you have a goal, you set the sub goals to hit the main goal, and hard work will always pay off. Remember, that was my previously my mindset. To hear her come in and basically just radically shit on my entire philosophy in the best way, was eye-opening to me. I'm going to do my best to condense this down. I don't even know why. It's my podcast. I can talk as long as I want. I am going to condense this down and not take too much of her material that is original to her, because I want to encourage you guys when her book comes out, which it's coming out soon, to go purchase it, as I will be doing as well. She married the science, like the data behind what it means to be successful, with a little bit of the woo of what it means to be successful. And so because she did not totally isolate the woo and just focus on that, she backed it up by science. I think it triggered something in my very logical brain that needed to be triggered and needed to be heard at that moment, which is actually the whole kind of point of quantum surfing. Essentially what she said, she gave this example that there was a study done that mathematicians and scientists tried to figure out what made the top 1% successful people different than the remaining 99. And the one thing that they could find that that top 1% had that the other 99 didn't was luck. Luck. And that feels so intangible and so unattainable to me that it kind of pissed me off. But then she continued down this train of thought and basically posed to us that you could potentially create your own luck, and gave us a couple of different ways how to do that. One of the other studies that she cited was that there was a group of scientists conducted the study that they had a group of people that considered themselves lucky and a group of people that considered themselves unlucky. both self-selected, like whether they were lucky or unlucky. And they asked all of those people, regardless of how they coined themselves or categorized themselves, they asked them to do the same task. That task was they were handed a newspaper and they were told to open the newspaper and count all of the images within the newspaper. And at the very end, they were going to be graded based off of two things: the accuracy of the number of images, and two, the speed with which they were able to come to that accurate number. So the people that were in the unlucky group, they did exactly what I would do. And that was they sat and counted page 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Flip, page 2, 1, 2, 5 plus 2 equals 7. Page 3, 1, 2, 3, 7 plus 3 equals 10, and went up from there. The lucky group, instead, they read the first page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 images. And then they got sidetracked by the article in the corner. The article in the corner was about a car accident that they wanted to read more about because it happened to be on their route home. So they started to read about the car accident and then were like, oh, wait, I'm actually supposed to be doing this, that I'm being graded off of like the time and the correct number of images and stuff. So they flipped to the next page, got refocused. Then they saw this big headline on the second page that said, there are 43 pictures in this newspaper. So because they allowed themselves to basically have little mini side quests, they ended up scoring higher on the accurate number of images, as well as the time it took to get the number of those images, because they allowed themselves to explore a little bit. They allowed themselves to be a little bit more curious than those that were so blinded by the end goal that they were not allowing themselves to do anything but focus on the one thing. I think you guys know me well enough at this point throughout this podcast that it's often that I have multiple projects going at once. And that's the way that I like it. For a while, I tried to kind of fight that and really niche down and do one specific thing. And that's kind of when I put all of my eggs in one basket, that I got screwed in Kentucky. And so I found this little piece of advice to be very reassuring. So now I know I'm a projector and I need to switch between projects relatively frequently to continue the momentum. I now know that I am a seer, which means I need to use my intuition whenever I'm faced with a new project or new person in my life. I now know that I can engineer my own luck, and one way to do that is to just continuously be curious and always learn. And so all of those things have brought me to this point in my life. Again, like I realize I'm sounding a little woo-woo here, and that's okay. I'm gonna venture out for a little bit and see how it lands. Let me bring in one other comment that I got recently that I had to marinate on a little bit. A few weeks ago, actually it was probably closer to 8 or 9 weeks ago now, I got a comment about my podcast, a piece of feedback that said the listener felt like I was really boots on the ground, and that's why they enjoyed listening to me. And at first, I didn't really know how to take that. To me, boots on the ground feels a little like tactical and like I'm like inexperienced, I guess. Like I was taken aback by it at first, but then as I sat with it, I marinated on it a little bit more. I was like, wait, no, that's the beauty of it. I'm opening up the story for you guys to see me learn in real time. And that is very hard for someone who wants it to be like an Enneagram type 3, wants everything to be perfect from the moment that it comes into existence. But instead of shying away from being that boots on the ground voice, I'm going to lean into it a little bit more. And so that's what I'm doing today. I am allowing my human design. I am allowing myself to quantum surf. I am allowing myself to be the boots on the ground as we go about this new project that I mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast. So 15, 16 minutes in, now you're getting the juicy stuff. Let's dive in. Interrupting this episode to offer some additional value. If you're thinking about buying a short-term rental, whether it's your first one ever or the first time you're actually treating it like a real investment, I made something just for you. It's the short-term rental acquisition checklist. I made it in real time as we walked through the acquisition process of a new short-term rental that we purchased for ourselves. It's the exact framework I use when analyzing properties to add to our own portfolio. Think of it as your step-by-step guide to staying organized, running the numbers, navigating due diligence, and making confident decisions instead of second-guessing yourself all the way through the process. It's all through the lens of someone who knows the importance of branding and marketing. If you're ready to evaluate properties like an investor and set yourself up for success from day one, head to the show notes and download it for free. Let's turn your future listing into your legacy. Okay, back to the show. Back in March of last year, I went to Level Up Your Listing Summit, which is a short-term rental conference in Phoenix, Arizona, hosted by Natalie Palmer and Tatiana Taylor-Tate. I am getting ready to go there for the second year in a row. In fact, that summit was so impactful to me. I bought my ticket for the following year, right there sitting in the seats that year. It was at that summit that I met a woman named Heather. And Heather and I maintained communication throughout the year. And then come about, I guess it was September, October timeframe, that we started to talk almost every day. And I found this property that was at the time called the Toasted Marshmallow. I thought about purchasing it, sent it to her. She's a realtor in Maryland. And she also owns multiple of her own short-term rentals. And I was like, what do you think about this? Is this a good, what do you think? And so she encouraged us to actually stay there, which we did. That was originally my husband's idea. And she was like, yeah, go for it. And so we stayed. And you guys know the rest of the story of Luna. There's like 5 podcast episodes on how Luna came to life. But that's when we really started to grow in friendship. In November of last year, 2025, we actually joined Action Academy at the exact same time, within a week of each other. From there, our opportunities, our friendship, our hopefully potential partnership opened up. And so that's how Heather, my path crossed with Heather's, and how it got more intertwined as the year of 2025 went on. So I guess it was around Christmas time, because that's when I was home. I'm originally from a small town right outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. And I was visiting my parents, and there was this property in a small downtown area of right out like 15 minutes from my childhood home where my parents still live. And I had seen it, and I knew it had been up for sale had to been close to 2 or 3 years at that point. And I was like, I wonder what's going on with that building. And it had been on my radar before. I knew that it was for sale, but I didn't really have the means, the network, the knowledge to even know what I could do with that building potentially. This building was previously an assisted living facility. And now when I see it, I see a boutique hotel. So I'm like, I wonder what it takes to create a boutique hotel from that building. I mean, every room already has a bathroom. There's plenty of plumbing throughout. I'm sure because it was assisted living, has ADA compliance. There's probably an elevator. I wonder what else I can dig up on it. So that started, I also sent the property to Heather. And so simultaneously, she used her realtor resources. I used my ChatGPT and scrappy Google knowledge to see what we could dig up on it. And we found that, yes, indeed, it went out of business close to 3 years ago now, has been vacant ever since. Not abandoned. So maybe I misled you a little bit in the beginning part of this episode. But for all intents and purposes, nobody's doing anything with the building right now. So I'm thinking, I know this place better than the back of my hand. I grew up here. I've lived here since I was 5 years old. I know possibly local contractors and can at least have a friend of a friend that might know somebody that works downtown or in the zoning office or has connections to the area. Why don't we try to find more? So one of my friends that's a local realtor, he decided that he was going to try and get us onto the property. Thankfully, we did have permission to be on the property, but it did, from the outside looking in, look like we were trespassing because we couldn't get inside for the very first visit, which was in early January. I did just a kind of exterior walkthrough. We couldn't get inside the building, so we just looked at the exterior. I took some videos, sent them to Heather. She was not familiar with this town at all, so I just sent her a few videos of the downtown, and We're like, is this even feasible? Is it even possible? That piqued our interest a little bit more because it did indeed feel possible. And as I was digging up, like I said, I have like the knowledge of just living there and knowing what the area is like. But then I started to like put my investor hat on because that was another part of Action Academy, right? Like they have a lot of people in there raising capital for multiple projects, both outside of hospitality and in the hospitality world. So that's something that was new to me. Like I said, I was gaining all of these new resources by joining Action Academy, and learning how to capital raise was one of them. I was putting on my investor hat and seeing, okay, how would we sell this to people if we wanted people to invest in this idea? Everything that was already inside my head was coming to light in all of my research. And I was like, wow, am I just intuitively on the right path? Because we found out how many wineries within a 15-mile radius there were of this location that hosted weddings but didn't have on-site accommodations. We did research into other ADRs, average daily rates in the area, other occupancy rates in the area. And by in the area, I mean this place is kind of on a little island where there is no hotel for people to stay at. The nearest one to all of those wineries is about 45 minutes away, and you either have to go right next to the interstate or you have to go all the way back to Charlottesville. We keep venturing down this path of like, is this feasible? Is this a good idea? What should it be? So we continue down, right? Okay. Now let's fast forward to, I think it was the end of January when we actually made it a date to put it on the calendar with the listing agent to be able to go inside and see the bones of the building. So we got to go for a site visit. We really had no idea what we were walking into because it had been vacant for nearly 3 years, and we were pleasantly surprised once we got on site for the site visit. Everything, the heat was still on, the utilities were still on. The owner had mentioned that this is one of his legacy properties. He didn't want this to go to any new owner that wasn't going to consciously pour into the local community and make this building, whatever it ended up being, a real integral part, positively impactful part of the community. And so he had done a lot in the off time when it had been vacant. Like the landscaping pretty much had been kept up. Like I said, the utilities were all live, they were working. And so it was really incredible to see the potential in this building. Just to give you a little bit of insight onto the specs of the building, it is 23,500 square feet. It is on 5 acres in a little downtown area. There is the building on one side of the land, and then there's this little cross street behind that building. And then there's an extra about 2 to 2.5 acres on the opposite side of that street that is completely untouched at this point. I was just really excited to see the potential in this property because once we got there, we discovered that there were plans for future expansion when it was the assisted living facility. To put another layer on top of this, if you know anything about the Central Virginia area, you know, like I already mentioned, all of the wineries, but there's really beautiful spas in the area too. Like if you've ever heard of Keswick Hall or Keswick Vineyards, they have this just absolutely gorgeous spa. The Inn at Willow Grove has a gorgeous spa. Clifton Inn, they have a beautiful historical estate with weddings, and just it's a beautiful, hospitable area. And so when we get there, we see not only are there, oh gosh, now I'm going to blank on the number, 20 plus residential rooms. There's also a section that is an old medical office because it was an assisted living facility. They often had to have doctor's visits. So instead of making, having to have a bus and bus them to their doctors, they put the doctor right there in the building. And so as Heather and I were walking through, we were like, I don't think it would take that much to make this medical office area into a spa. The wheels just continued to turn from there. And so our point of that site visit was to get a little bit more information about the standing of the building, what it looked like, and what it would take to take it from the assisted living facility that it was previously to potentially a boutique hotel. And on that walkthrough, we were lucky enough to have not only the listing agent there, we had my realtor friend who is the local realtor there as well. We had my dad and my mom. They wanted to be along for the ride because they pass this building every Saturday when they go to do their weekly grocery shopping. Of course, Heather and I were there, and then we also were able to have a local contractor there. He was a specialist contractor, so he was able to give us a little bit like of a ballpark budget. He was not a general contractor, but still his insight was invaluable. And then we moved into the underwriting phase of the deal. We are basically trying to figure out, like, let's take it back to Action Academy. Typically, the people in the hospitality asset class are buying a revenue generating asset if it's a boutique hotel. So there's like some sort of owner in place right now. Money is coming in and people are looking for specific levers that they can pull to increase revenue, NOI, so that they can get the loan for the property. We don't necessarily have that in this case because it's not generating revenue. And even the revenue that it did generate in the past was for an assisted living facility, not for a boutique hotel. So essentially what this is stripped down to is it's a real estate asset. Well, now let's look at it through real estate asset lens. 23,500 square foot building on 5 acres in a downtown area. There are not comps for that. So we didn't really know how we could put out an offer for this type of property if we didn't have revenue to create an offer from. We don't have comps in the area to create an offer from. So we basically needed to figure out what the renovation costs were going to be in order to back ourselves into an offer price. Okay, next layer to this is that it's in a historical district, and part of the 23,500 square feet is a historical building. So there is potential for us to get historical renovation tax credits for the renovations that are completed. Now, I had no idea what this entailed. I still don't know that I have an idea of what this entailed, but this is just purely research process, even up until now. Like you guys are living it live with me before there's even an offer put in. So there's a large amount of due diligence before there's even an offer put in and we actually go into the due diligence period. But apparently you can get tax credits for renovating a historical building, and there are consultants that will help you maximize the tax credit for renovating that historical building. So it's a 3-part process, and I think that 2 parts of the process can be done prior to closing and starting renovations. The 3rd part of actually executing the renovations obviously has to be done post-closing. So we are navigating that process as well, because in order to get those tax credits, we have to hit certain markers of the historical requirements, if that makes sense. So this has been an incredibly research intensive process before we even basically get to the starting line. However, on my end of things, look, am I going to be the one that's going to impeccably underwrite this deal? Probably not. Am I the one that does have the local knowledge? Absolutely. And just putting it out into the universe, which I guess is another part of that quantum surfing topic that I talked about earlier. Basically, one of the ways to engineer your luck is believe that you're going to be lucky. So I believe I'm going to get lucky. And just like I have in the past with this project so far, I'm being referred to local contractors that might be able to give us a more accurate estimate on what the renovation costs so that we can settle on an offer price. So that's where we're at with this one. We are very excited. And oh yeah, let me go back to what else I bring to the deal. The branding and marketing, of course. So I have really made it a point, and Heather has made it a point to research the background of Gordonsville, because when you live there, you know the history, but you don't know the nitty gritty of the history. At least I didn't. And so we have dove into the history of the area of Gordonsville to see what all it is known for. And it is known for being a crossroads. There's actually a legitimate railroad that ran through there. And so it was basically a stopping place for people when they were traveling, and was quite the intersection of ideas and hospitality. And this is something that runs in Gordonsville's bones. And we envision this place where people can stop and pause and enjoy the the same things that people were enjoying in that space 200 years ago. Like, how extremely cool is that? While still bringing in local vendors and being able to support them with an extra, like, booming area of hospitality, like pouring this all back into my hometown. It's kind of feels like a full circle moment to me, and something that as we get to each step, like the first walkthrough or the exterior walkthrough, the first interior walkthrough, finding out about the tax credits, like every step of the way has felt like a small little nod where my intuition that I apparently am so meant to be using has been like, yeah, it's working. Yeah, it's working. And so for me to be able to take all of those and then all of that experience in the hospitality world, all of that, like just what makes me me, and be able to contribute it back to my hometown and the place where I grew up just feels really, really incredible. So I wish I had like a better, more thought out like call to action for this episode, but I don't really. It's just me being the boots on the ground and sharing what I'm going through in real time. So maybe there will be a part 2 if we get to a place where we can give an offer, and maybe there won't be, but we will see. And I hope you have enjoyed some insight into this journey of not only Action Academy, but also the future of this vacant assisted living facility that could potentially be turned into a boutique hotel in my hometown. So with that, I will talk to you guys next week. Cheers to being the best in your brand and your market, which may be my hometown.
You just completed another episode of the Brandon Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.